Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, on whatever time you're listening to. For me, it's morning, so good morning. I want to welcome everybody to another In My Feels episode. And today I'm going to dive in on, I guess, I'm feeling, I wouldn't say angry, because, or maybe I am a little angry. I'm angry at how kind of collectively, consciously, everything's kind of turning out, and how, you know, the government overreach and everything else is kind of, becoming out of hand. And it's not me blaming anyone, because I understand that our collective consciousness is us, so we are to blame. So I'm taking accountability for the way I feel, and as you know, the two emotions are love and fear, and within those spectrums you have, anger and envy and grief. So those five kind of emotions, love, fear, grief, anger, envy. When I feel anger inside myself, if I suppress it, it becomes rage. Rage is a very destructive, progressive, I wouldn't even call it an emotion. It's something else. It's something else internalized, which has not been allowed to express itself. It's like love not being able to express itself becomes fear. And it just kind of manifests into this internalized, which aids to the physical experience that you are attracting. So I'm feeling a little angry. And before we start, thoughts, feelings, emotions, everything on the inside creates you out to the exterior. So again, please ask yourself, how are you feeling right now in this moment? And really take your time again and dive in on your emotions and your feelings and everything else. And why am I feeling angry? Because I'm seeing a bunch of, I guess, countries and people's rights and everything just kind of being whittled away collectively, consciously. And I'm trying to bring awareness to the power that we have as a collective to enable us to, A, stay healthy, B, manifest everything we want in life and focus on the things we want. Focus on the happiness aspect of it and the freedom aspect of it, because we have been given free will to manifest anything we want. And the kind of the fear element is creeping in to that by media and government and everything else. And, this is not a conspiracy theory. The things I'm going to speak about, when I first heard them about a year and a half ago, sounded completely like a conspiracy theory. And now everything's coming to fruition, because I guess the conspiracy theories have become manifest. I also want this podcast to be a safe space, for open conversation and dialogue. It's okay to disagree, no judgments. Doesn't make, me or anyone else right or wrong. There is no right and wrong. It just is. But we have to understand the power we have over our own lives. And the collective thoughts, emotions, beliefs, conditionings is adding to the overall collective consciousness of our planet. So I want to dive in on just kind of the kind of, I guess, the vaccination, the COVID thing and everything else, because it's almost become this thing now of, when you see someone, hi, how are you? I'm good. The usual talk. And then you kind of dive in on, the weather and the kind of, the generalized chat. And the strange thing for me is COVID now, and the vaccines, unvaccinated, it's become a generalized chat. It's almost like, oh, are you vaccinated? Oh, well, yeah, maybe yes or no, all these type of things. And that's become the consensus for kind of everyday chat now, which is A, super strange to me, and B, something I don't like. And so I'm feeling a little angry at kind of the way the governments are almost playing into the hand of the pharmaceutical companies and media and everything else. And it's this whole kind of cluster that's being projected externally onto us, which is kind of affecting us internally. And I'm going to dive in on kind of some examples. I mean, Austria, beautiful country, they're going in a lockdown for only the unvaccinated over the age of 12. So if you're a teenager and you're not vaccinated, you cannot go outside your house for 2 weeks. Now, vaccinated people can go out. So it's become this kind of blame the unvaccinated for the pandemic, even though the pandemic is the pandemic before the vaccines. So you can't blame anyone. It was clearly raging before that, and it's going to rage even with the vaccines. That's just the way it is. Because you have a vaccine doesn't mean you can't catch COVID. Everyone I've met who's been vaccinated has caught COVID previously. And this is now created the kind of lockdown for the unvaccinated. In Austria is the divide is there anyway, because we have been isolated for so long, and during a pandemic, that we have created habits and habitual habits of separation. And this is exactly how it's supposed to be. As due to previous lockdowns, we've been isolated from ourselves, society, and the collective narrative now is vaccinated or unvaccinated. And this is our collective consciousness, which is going to keep manifesting as separateness. But as I said before, previously on the show, we are not separate. And the sign of an advanced culture or society is that they realize that they are all one. So we are pretty much a primitive society because we are still feel like we're all separated from each other when we're not. We all came from the same source, spiritually speaking. And it's become almost this narrative of, a sense of duty. If you're not vaccinated, you're being incredibly selfish because you're putting other people at risk. But the people at risk are the ones who are being vaccinated anyway. So in theory, they should be protected regardless if someone's vaccinated or not. And again, I see both sides. I'm plutonic in this situation. I have an opinion. This is why I'm getting it out. But I understand that both sides of the spectrum. But it's this story of everyone I've met who's been vaccinated hasn't done it for other people, to protect other people. They've done it for themselves, which is fine, which is okay. You have to have a sense of self-centeredness. Selfish is such a conditioned word to be negative, but it's not. It's a natural trait to be selfish within yourself, because everything starts with you. And until you can help you can't help anyone else. Another country that's kind of taking it over the edge is Singapore. Singapore is denying healthcare to unvaccinated, which to me sounds horrendous. It sounds horrendous. And I don't know how that can even play out. So, if someone's on the way to hospital dying and they're unvaccinated, they can't get treatment because they're unvaccinated. It's this narrative being put out of, truth. The government's putting out, you need to do this. It's your civil duty. It's your right to do this. Big pharma companies are doing, and they're making shit ton of profits and everything else. And the power is slowly, again, like I've been saying, has been slowly wearing away because people have had enough. They're like, I'm just going to do it. I'm doing it because I don't want to be restricted in my movements. But what's happening now is we're restricted in our movements because that's the way we feel. That's what we're kind of used to. So therefore, if we're restricted internally, which I've been feeling restricted internally, so therefore on the outside, my physical manifestation is restriction. And, if the vaccination or the vaccines are truth or considered to be truth, then why is it being forced? You can't force truth. It just is. I mean, the truth is always there. The truth always rises to the top. The truth is always, it's not something that's forced upon someone. It's something that happens supernaturally. It's part of kind of the existence of our human nature. And most of the countries who are vaccinated, I mean, Germany is another country, a bunch of the states who are highly vaccinated are having severe problems with the COVID rates going up and everything else. And you have this kind of double-edged sword of people who are unvaccinated, the government convincing you that the first 2 shots work, while convincing the people who have had the vaccine that the previous ones haven't really worked, so you need to get the booster. Again, if you agree or disagree with me, that's fine. But I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to have an open dialogue. Someone hit me up recently and we had a great conversation on Instagram, and it was kind of this flow. No one was judging anyone. No one was diving in on, you should be doing this as your civil duty. You should be doing what you want to do for you. Because as I strongly preach the power we have, the manifestations we all have and everything else. You are the commander. You are the in control. You are in control. You are the power. You are the magnet for everything in your life. And that goes for everything. That goes for your love life, your job, the money in your life, your health. Everything is you manifested in physical reality internally. And the way this is going, more lockdowns are coming. It's kind of this slow wave of emotion collectively that we're adding to the collective consciousness. And as I said before, we're creatures of habits. So during the lockdown, this is going to repeat again. And I'm sure it will keep repeating until we break this collective consciousness of feeling, I guess, trapped within ourselves, restricted, like I'm doing now. I'm adding to that collective consciousness, but I'm speaking about it. I'm letting it out. I'm letting my anger out so it can disappear. And when you focus on something, it disappears. When I focused on my mental health got better. When I focus on negative aspects in my life, they got better because I addressed them. I dealt with them. I no longer allowed them to consume me. I read them. I analyzed them. And I now know who I am by who I am not. And the thing that really kind of irritates me is the names they give for the kind of the COVID passports and everything else. The green pass for Italy. It's like, what? There's nothing green about that pass. It's restriction pass. It's if you don't want to be free, don't get vaccinated. If you want to be free, come over to the green side. But the grass isn't always greener, as they say. For Greece, it's the freedom pass. But it's how can it be freedom pass if you're forcing someone to do something to get the pass? That's the opposite of freedom. And we have to collectively and spiritually question authority. None of us are questioning authority right now. We're allowing authority to run our lives and tell us what we can do and where we can go and everything else. Now, again, I'm speaking from a spiritual place of manifesting, from a place that I know that everything in my life is me. That's where I am coming from, accountability for myself. So I can't speak for anyone else. But of course, be safe when you're out. I wear my mask all the time and all that type of stuff. And another country that's going, gung-ho, Germany, France, Holland, or the Netherlands. France is taking away freedom for people over the age of 65 who don't have their boosters. So if you have 2 shots already, in theory, you're considered vaccinated. But in France, you're not until you get the booster. So I think in the next few weeks, if you're over 65 and you don't have the booster, that COVID pass or that passport that you have gets rejected, goes away until you get the shot. Now, you tell me that isn't forced, mandated, or any of that type of stuff. It's insane to me. And then you kind of think collective consciously, where does it end? If we have a booster now, that's 3 shots within a year, 1 year. So you're going to have a shot every 6 months for how long, and keep going and keep going and keep going. And governments, again, are extending their restrictions. Big Pharma are making untold profits. I know Pfizer are set to make $100 billion this year from taxpayers' money who are paying for the vaccines, which the first 2 shots have statistically shown that they technically don't work. That's why you need the booster. And again, I'm seeing the kind of the Twitter meltdowns, the comments from people who are stating, I'm not vaccinated, and then the kind of the floodgates for attack, for judgment, for all these type of things, which I find completely detrimental. And we should be able to have open conversations about everything and anything without judgments. And as I said before, the majority of people's arguments are to get vaccinated is they are doing it to protect others. But, I somewhat know that's not true. I'm not saying for everyone, because we are predominantly a selfish culture, which is okay, like I've said before. But this narrative is being used to take away personal choice and personal freedom and personal, free will, even though I know I have free will because I manifest free will. And that's the gift we have been given in this physical existence. And the thing that also confuses me is that the government, Big Pharma, and media, they have an issue now because they have to convince people who have already had the 2 shots to get the booster, as the previous vaccines are wearing off and aren't as working as they previously thought, while single-handedly trying to convince new people who aren't vaccinated that the original vaccination works. So it's a kind of a mind-boggling kind of world we're living in right now, collective consciously, and I can see where it's heading because these are thought-driven and belief-driven and collectively of everyone on the planet that is driving the narrative of our world. And again, everything I've spoken about the kind of COVID passes and the lockdowns and the freedom passes and this and that and this, those were all conspiracy theories a year and a half ago, and now they are coming true because this is our collective consciousness. But we have to come together for our own freedoms. Now, if you're unvaccinated, again, great. I love you. I see you as part of the one, which we all are one. If you're vaccinated, great. I love you too. You're part of the one. There is no separating us. You cannot be separated. And again, the sign of a primitive society is that we see ourselves separate from one another, but we are not. And I really want to drum this home. We are individuals manifesting for ourselves and also as a collective. So everything we see externally is a mirror representation of all of us internally. It's such a powerful and beautiful notion to know that we cannot manifest for anyone else. We cannot wish harm on someone else. We only attract that to ourselves. But collectively, our individual manifestations add to the collective consciousness of our world, of our planet, of our universe. And again, please hit me up on my socials and my leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I want to hear from you. I want to have open conversations. I want to invite more people on the show. I really want to dive in on our collective consciousness. And I want to host I'll host a group podcast as well, just to dive in more on collective consciousness and manifestations and everything else. I'm going to have some clubhouses rolling. I'm going to really dive in on the internal dialogue that we go through on a daily basis, which is adding to the collective consciousness. And I want to improve the lives of everyone who's listening. And I want us to rise together and be one together and allow ourselves to feel and allow ourselves to express and allow ourselves to attract and allow ourselves to love one another, starting with ourselves.